Tipp today in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, listeners, wherever you're tuned in from around the world. You're very welcome to Tipp Today here on Tipp FM with me, Stephen Gleeson, here this week for Fran. And it's big news there with the weather changing big time in Tipperary in the next while and across Ireland. Of course, quite wet outside today in Clonmel. I do hope you'll stay tuned for the next 3 hours here. Leanne is on the phones. If you'd like to get in touch with us here, our number is 1-800 938 007, or you can text us here on 083 311 3311. We've got a very busy show on the way again today, and we have one listener who will share why he believes RTE should move to the Midlands, and also Pat Mullally will be in studio and he'll have a look at talk about GAA Go. And also, question to put to people: is it time for the leaving cert to be scrapped in favour of something different in Ireland that reflects the 21st century? And senior Programme Manager with the Irish Supply Project Eastern and Midlands region, Gary Gibson, will be live in studio from Irish Water. And we'll also have Jack Marshall, who will be on a bit later on, and he'll chat to us about chronic pain. And so we have a lot to cover over the next 3 hours in what is going to be a very busy show as usual. Just to begin with, we'll have a look through the newspapers today. The Irish Independent leads with big tech firms accused of AI washing as Meta cuts 350 jobs in Ireland. Meta and other big tech firms are AI washing, cutting staff and costs for non-AI economic reasons, it said. So Meta, you're talking Instagram, Facebook, a lot of social media, and a lot of those jobs are in Dublin. And 350 of its 1,800 Dublin-based staff will be cut, and that news just coming through this morning. Also on the Irish Independent, Israel's treatment of Irish activists is called disgusting. The Taoiseach has condemned the disgusting treatment of Irish detainees in Israel after its security minister posted a video of activists bound and kneeling on the ground. That's the news on the front of the Irish Independent. Moving to the Irish Times, they lead with Irish Rail to scrap new 50 million IT system for trains, and that's in relation to an IT system that will control the movement of trains across the country, and it's unlikely now to be used and has been written down. A 50 million value, 50 million euros is what the project cost. And the TMS, which is known as the Traffic Management System, so that TMS was to form part of an overall National Train Control Centre, which has been developed at Heuston Station in Dublin. The system, dubbed by the Minister as the brain of the railway network, has been beset by delays and cost overruns. We've heard that before in relation to other big projects across the state. The Irish Daily Mail leads with RTE told clean up your act on pay. The committee told 250,000 euros cap was breached, and a list of earners were classed as a waste of space. And also Evan Quillen says that she was badly treated by the RTE head of sport. So a lot there on the front of the Irish Daily Mail, and RTE bosses have been told to reveal the true scale of pay to its stars with its annual list of its top 10 earners branded a waste of space. Director General Kevin Backhurst appeared before the Oireachtas Media Committee yesterday, where it emerged some staff are breaching the 250,000 euros pay cap. Finally then to the Irish Farmers Journal, and some said pigs will never fly but sheep will. there's a boost as hoggets fly to Africa, and that's the heading in the Irish Farmers Journal. Sheep prices in some March sales have increased by anywhere from €5 to €20 a head as buying ramps up ahead of the Islamic religious festival on the horizon, and demand has been boosted by interest from live exporters purchasing sheep for exporting to a number of European markets as well as North Africa, and wholesale exports and sheep's also in carcass form. The Irish Farmers Journal understands that another similar consignment is lined up to take off later in the week. So hoggets are flying to Africa. Also there, 2025 cattle prices delivered up to €800 million to the Irish economy, and that's in this week's paper. Well, one of the stories that has been in the news in the past while, and it's caught the attention of listeners as well, is the idea to move RTE to the Midlands. And opposition leader Mary Lou MacDonald said that RTE top brass believe that the rules don't apply to them, while working people playing by the rules had been abandoned by the government. And Mary Lou called on the government to sort this out as she demanded accountability and consequences. It came after it was revealed that Derek Mooney has been at least the 9th highest paid presenter since 2020 in RTE, but had not featured in annual lists as he was classified as a producer. And the development brought comparisons to the financial and governance scandal that rocked RTE 3 years ago following undeclared payments to host Ryan Tubridy. Philip Lynch got in touch with the show this week, and he believes it's time RTE moved to the Midlands, and he joins me now on the line. Good morning to you, Philip.
Morning, Stephen. How do you do?
Good, Philip. You've an idea that RTE should move to a more central location. Can you explain this one a bit further to us?
Sure, all this trouble is going on with RTE far too long, and government are not moving on it. And there is a blatant disregard for accounts and everything. That place is run as a private enterprise. And they bring in, like you tell me, that they're not making money. They're selling time on the different channels they have and selling it to people who want it, like the soccer crowd and the rugby crowd. And a lot of their people are there, and they're promoting all ads and everything. They're on it day and night. And they give full cover to every game in soccer or rugby and all the rest, whereas the GAA are left to highlights and things like that on games. Now, we are Irish. We're proud people. It cost us a lot to get rid of the British over the time people fought for our independence. We're now free. Now, why are we allowing our national, which is supposed to be our national television station, which costs every one of us money through the TV license, and then the state, you see what it's also costing the state? And it's run as a private company. There is no account given. You remember Dee, what her name last year, and she gave 2 fingers to the revenue commissioners. Now, if you and I gave 2 fingers to the revenue commissioners, you'd be gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Why is it that these people are allowed to carry on with all this time? Now, it's gone beyond the joke now at the present time, gone beyond the joke. Now, I think it's time to take RTE out of Dublin. Now, sorry, I should call it by its right name, BBC Dublin. That's what it is.
Okay.
It promotes other cultures other than our own in a blatant manner. All you have to do is look at it. You don't have to ask the question. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And they are promoting all this, and they're getting money for it. And don't you believe anything else? Now, where is that money going and who's getting it? But so far, the revenue commissioners have not come up with the answers. But if it was you or I tell you, they'd get after you there. But they're getting away with it. It's like the fact that justice is very very, I suppose, selective. Insofar as two sulkies passed me yesterday on the road, and I barely got between them, and they wouldn't move over. None of them with insurance, with tax, with helmets, or with reflective clothing, without indicators or anything else, and they're not even looked at by the guards. And the same way now with BBC Dublin.
Well, just to focus on
too long.
Just to focus on that, many of those employed in RTE would argue that they do a huge amount of work as the national broadcaster. And would you say that they shouldn't be, made that much? They shouldn't like that the funds are too big that they're getting.
They have to prove that one. I don't see that happening. The proof of the pudding is always in the easy. And I think if they took that place out of RT, brought it to Tullamore, it would cost less for people to stay there. And they'd have plenty. Look at all this thing that was run, all this information that was run through the internet and everything else. You could be 1,000 miles away and they can interview you at any time. So distance, Dublin doesn't need to be in the place it is. And if it was in the centre of the country, it might give a little more country effort and a little more prominence to our great culture, our music, and our games.
So do you feel that
they should be doing?
Do you feel that they've lost touch with the Irish people, Philip, if you were to put it that way, that you feel it's just gone too global? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it isn't. It's gone too English. As I see it at the present time, those are English games and weren't at all. But I won't say what I was thinking of saying now. It might offend people, but whoever. The English of Dublin are promoting all this thing, and they're promoting it because they're getting money out of it. And don't you think otherwise? But I think everything else, we're all subject to law, or should be.
And Philip, where do you get your news, or what channels do you watch on television? Where would you get a lot of the information that you have?
I have a satellite box here, and I'm always on it. I get documentary channels, I get music channels, I get different things on that, and I also get English programs if I want to, and everybody else can do it too. Why should our national television station, which is supposed to be our national television station, not promote in an active way our culture, our music, our games? And they're not.
And do you think
I'm always on satellite. Once it comes to evening or things like that, I'm always on satellite.
And what are your thoughts on the conversation that we were having during the week about GAA Go? We were talking about that it's, pay-per-view for a lot of the Gaelic games at the moment, and, one of the big matches of the football championship now between Kerry and Donegal, that's going to be behind a paywall as such. Does that tie in with what you're saying here to some degree?
Well, I think now the GAA should rethink that one. From the point of view, I'm an old age pensioner, and I like to see our games and all the rest of it. And if it's going to cost me money, well, it's not the fairest thing in it, insofar as that we have our own national television station promoting rugby and soccer. Are the GAA going to be run into a second section altogether that people won't even watch it? Now, they'd want to be careful about that one, because the others are promoting it free. Now, if the GAA are going to charge, it's going to be a big loss to the like of myself. I noticed the other day, I was inclined to have a look at that Clare to Prairie game at the time, and it was locked up. And I think it's terrible.
Yeah, next month you're going to see the World Cup, and a lot of the matches will be broadcast from across the globe, and we'll all love that and follow that without a doubt. But the fact is that should you choose to watch an Irish game, you won't be able to do so in the free kind of way that you can with the Soccer World Cup. So that there's a difference being created there already.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think the GA should rethink that one. When you have such a crowd as BBC Dublin promoting all the other games, because look at there's at the present time, farming is under big pressure because they gave 5-day, 40-hour week to everybody. The same corresponding thing wasn't given to farmers. And young people are looking at their leisure time now more than anything else. And as a result, if people are not going to farm, and if we're going to import all our food, which is a possibility at the present time, the way they're looking at it. But if they have to do that, all the rural areas are going to die. And the GA are exactly under pressure at the present time, because young people are being promoted to be soccer people or rugby people. And we have to be very careful with that one, because we cannot afford to lose our independence and our culture.
Yeah, and looking back, I suppose, across the eras, the decades that you've watched television and followed radio, from radio airing to, the emergence of local radio late in the last century, right up to the present day. Have you seen many changes like that? Do you think we've moved on too much from how things were? Have we lost something in the process, in the time that's passed?
Well, sure, like with life changes every day, and every one of us dies. Everybody, it's not selective. Everybody goes in that line. And while we're here, I don't know where I was before I was born in here, and I don't know when I'm leaving. And all I can do is the one thing: look at it and say, I should laugh every day. This is not permanent, and people putting up money and everything else and then leave it all after them and then probably kill someone for it at the present time. So it's a different time, and life changes all the time, and we should change with it, insofar as that they should take BBC Dublin now out of there and started as a true RTE centre in Tullamore, and let it be run by the local radio people. Look at the local radio, like yourself, are very popular, and you do a better job any day of the week than they're doing in Dublin for the rural areas. And if you bring it to Tullamore and give it into the hands of local radio, they'll run it in an efficient and a profitable manner. Why do we put up with this thing? There in Montrose is a prime site that could be sold for building and all the rest there now. Sell it out. Come to Tullamore and be in the centre of the country and promote what you should be doing, the local music, culture and games. And the GAA should reflect on what they're doing at present. I do agree with them that it is such a marvellous game. The world is entitled to see it, and that they should do that. But to charge for it is going to give the other people the advantage.
Yeah, just briefly, I suppose, to finish off on here, what type of programmes would you like to see more of, or listen to more, in relation to, rural Ireland that you've suggested there so far?
Well, there are so many channels at the present time coming out on them. One of them should be put aside for Irish music and country music and all that, and should play all day, every day, because people listening to music relax, and when they have problems and things like that, they tend to go and they tend to sing, and it helps them in life. And if you had a music channel that would operate all day, it would be a great advantage to everybody, because music is an international language, and everybody can understand it, and it lightens their load.
Yeah. Do you feel like young people are too stressed these days, though? Do you think we need something like that just to sing more, to understand more? Are we all a bit angry at the moment and in a rush all the time?
And it's been promoted in a lot of rough films on television as well as that, this type of thing. Yeah, money is put as the God now. Now, the God isn't money. God is loving and helping people out, not building them beyond life. So that I think that there's a change there. But what I do regret terribly is the fact that we as farmers, and I come from the war time. I'm 87, nearly 88 now. But I come from that time when food was a priority.
Okay.
And now that everybody is so well fed, and when you go into the supermarket and see the abundance and the quality of food in it, it's almost obscene to think there are people in the world that are starving. And we have so much there. And then when we think then that our people are going, taking drugs and drinking to excess and being in charge of a car, which then becomes a machine gun. I think we have to look at it. But I do think that they're on the wrong thing as regards this curing of people that are on drugs. I think the only way to cure a person on drugs, and I've seen it before in it, is lock them up in a room, cold turkey, and they won't go back again. All this other thing, giving them drugs and things like that, that's all useless.
Yeah. Now,
Philip,
many people would disagree with what you're saying there, you know, and like there's a lot of medical procedures out there to make sure that there is.
Yeah. I know, they probably do, but if you want results, you just have to get rid of this thing, because like it's a different day and age now. People are in charge of cars on the road, and there's quite an awful lot of accidents which are traced to drunkenness or drug taking and all that kind of thing. You can't have that, and that has to be cured, and you have to look at what is the most efficient solution to it. And I think cold turkey like that will take them out of the place then and stop them being used by the gangs.
Right. Well, listen, you're entitled to your opinion, Philip, and like very big, strong ideas there on a lot of topics. Just to bring you some of the feedback on that, Philip. Some are saying that you're 100% right regarding moving RTE out of Dublin, and that's from Jamie Kennedy in Nina. And someone else is saying that it's a scandal that anyone is earning more than 100,000 at the moment. So a lot of talk back here on the messages. Listen, Philip, thanks for chatting to us this morning here on Tipp FM.
Not at all. Thank you very much. God bless. Bye, bye, bye.
All the best. And that is Philip Lynch there, originally about moving RTE to the Midlands, and touched on a lot of topics there. So let us know what you think on the matter, and you can get in touch with us here 083 311 3311 or 1800 938 007. Leanne is on the phones. We're going to take a quick break. Back with more next.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
You're welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Stephen Gleeson here. Well, the text lines have lit up there this morning, so a lot of messages and callers in, and I'll bring them to you in due course. And we've been talking during the week about a number of topics. One is the necessity of cash and how it's just been worked away by banks, by organisations. John O'Shea was on yesterday talking to us about how the West Board will not be able to accept cash anymore. You must use a bank card or your mobile phone and whatever banking system you have. And many GAA fans were also left extremely disappointed by Tipp's performance against Clare over the weekend. But another thing that really agitated people was the GAA Go paywall, and that left many of our listeners unhappy. And we spoke to Teresa Collins earlier in the week and to chat about GAA Go cash, where it is and where it's going. I'm delighted to be joined in studio here by Pat Mullaly. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good. Great to have you here in studio. And I suppose we'll just start off just mentioning that the GAA Go and the paywall. Some people are finding that very difficult to adjust to, that games they would have normally just flicked on the TV, they're not able to get access to now.
That's true. The Tipp Clare game, of course, everyone wanted to watch that, especially all the Tipp fans that are out there. In my demagogue of being a pensioner or whatever the case may be, the fact is that to purchase a GAA pass is €95 a year. Some of my people on my age group may not be tech savvy to purchase a GAA Go pass and also then to go in and stream the game at home or whatever the case may be. So that particular match, which we all wanted to see, and they're taking the GAA are taking that away from us. Like, we were the young people going back into the 60s and the 70s that supported the GAA, went to their matches, whatever the case may be, went up to Croke Park to look at an All-Ireland, to look at a Leinster final, to look at a Munster final in Simple Stadium. Do you know what I mean? So, like, we were there supporting the GAA, and all of a sudden now they're taking that away from us. Yeah. Because it is too expensive. Like, if you look at it, for me to watch television at home, I know I can get Savio or whatever, but I have Sky. I pay a subscription to Sky, right? That's €65 a month. Now, on top of that, then, if I want to watch 2 or 3 matches inside in the GAA Go, I know I can get the 3 for 2 or whatever the case may be, is £30. If I want to watch one game, like the Tipperary Clare game, it's €15, right? And you have to pay that through a card. It's not it's a cashless situation. You have to purchase it by card. Now, you mentioned there about going into matches. The West Board are saying that cash is gone away. Now, I know that I saw not the other day, I saw there a couple of days inside in Clonmel, there was a collection box going around. Now, it was for a good charity, whatever it was that they were doing. It gets me now as a guess what the charity was. But I did see a guy with a bucket, and he had a sum up card machine, and he was tapping the card machine as they were going along. Right, you could take. So, sorry, I have no cash, but have you a card? Do you know? And they had it set up that they take €1 or €2 out of the thing for the charity, and it goes into the card.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So that's again now. The bucket was when you called. We're up to the traffic lights. Sorry, I have no cash. That was grand waved on. Now suddenly you have this thing slapped at you. And you know. So this is where people are going now. The fact is that going back to the GAA, and I think that they should re-look at it. I know it is. Look, we all said that the GAA was the Grab All Association. You know, it's very, very unfair to say it, and for GAA fans to be saying that about what headquarters are doing. But I think they should rethink it. You know,
now GAA Go and people that sign up, they would say that those matches weren't going to be shown by the national broadcaster, so that they're doing a service to people.
That's an argument that maybe is valid, right? But like, we're paying a license, a TV license, and the national games should have been free to air. I think anyway, should be free to air. Like, if the government are giving millions to RTE to bail them out of a hole because they're paying their presenters extraordinary amounts of money, they should be in the situation that if they're getting that much money, there should be a proviso inside there that all matches should be free to air.
Okay.
And if RTE want to, they can pay a subscription to GAA or a license fee to have all their matches free to air. Like, if you look at what they call it, last year, there was TG Cahir was promoting or was presenting a lot of the games. And if the games weren't on TG Cahir, they may be on the TG Cahir YouTube channel. Okay, they were in Irish. I'm not a fluent Irish speaker, but what I done was I stopped RTE or the TG Cahir commentary, and I put on yourself or Paul Carroll on Tipp FM on the radio beside it, and matched them up and synced them up, and away we went. So I could hear the commentary and also see what was happening. Now, as regards the Tipp and Clare game, to listen to the commentary on that, it would be an absolute joy to see not a joy, we were saddened, but to see the performance of what the Tipperary team were, what lack of performance was there, and to be able to commentate on it instead of listening to a colourful commentary by Paul Carroll, colourful commentary as aghast it was, but no matter how much you glass it up, we failed on that day.
And I suppose when you would have seen matches like this before, that it's something that's been taken from you.
It's taken.
In a respect.
Yeah, I remember when we got television first in 1963, when the channels were opened up first. We were living in a place called Drangan, and Priesttown, where I lived in, was on a hill, and we got our reception from Kipure, up over the Dublin Mountains. That's where they had their transmission, from up there. You could only get reception where we were. We had a kind of a direct link to Kipure, right? So we had the TV. The Railway Cup finals. Our house was full on St. Patrick's Day for the Railway Cup finals. People were coming up from the village, coming up. They couldn't get television inside in Drangan because Drangan was in a hole.
Right.
Do you know? So they could listen to it on the radio, but suddenly somebody had a television. The father said, come up. Our sitting room was full. People looking in the sitting room window. They had no seats inside. They could look in the window and look at the match on it.
Wow.
Right? You look at the All-Irelands. We were going out then as young fellas, kicking the ball against the wall, thinking that we were all Liam Salmons and whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Liam Devaney. When Liam Devaney used to come around, he was a salesman for Killock Limestone. And he'd be coming up to us. The first thing the father would say, take out the hurley. And he'd drive a ball up in the air, and we were amazed at this thing. He'd drive the ball so up the father it had just gone out of sight, to drop down within a metre of where he was standing. You know, so those were the things that we remember. And that has been taken away from us. Because you'd always look in, as a pensioner say, that you're looking for a night to look at television, or you're looking for something on a Sunday, right? You go in and you, after going to mass or whatever the case may be, you come home, you have your dinner, and you're prepared to watch the TV and watch a good game on it.
Yeah.
And now gone.
And in a way, it's that eroding of memories, it's that eroding of things that, you know, in years to come, a lot of children won't have remembered seeing Tipperary in the 2026 championship. The Waterford game, as far as I can remember, was behind the paywall. So too the Clare game. So it's like,
and they're not even going to show the Tipperary Limerick game. That's not on television at all. And the thing about it, we'd like to see that, for the simple reason is Tipperary is the home of hurling.
Yeah.
Right? We would like to see the Tipperary game, and if Liam Cahill decides to put on some under 20s that are out of the championship now, there's some brilliant players inside, and that they have speed. Blood them next Sunday or this weekend. That would be an ideal match for Tipperary fans to watch, because we're out of it. Effectively, okay, we have the minors.
Yeah.
Fair play to them, and we would support them. But like, these are the little things from rural Ireland's perspective. Okay, I'm living in an urban environment. I'm living just outside the town of Cahir, just within the speed limit in Cahir. But for the people that are living in rural Ireland, you know, they have been just, that demagogue has been just wiped away, pulled away.
And you're seeing that now, I suppose, with the West Board not allowed to take cash at matches. You're seeing this, you know...
so what are they going to do? Are they going
of cash disappearing in some
Cash
respects.
disappearing, but what are they going to do at the gates? Are they going to have this little sum-up card, or going to have something that you just tap your card before you go in, whatever the case may be?
That's it, once you have that card, but if you don't have that,
no,
you're
an awful lot of people, and I'll just give you a little thing about as regards people afraid of cash, seeing as we maybe might tip into that now. There was an offer made in my job. I worked with Aircom one time. There was an offer made in our job that the people would get a certain discount inside on their telephone line, right? And the thing was that you'd have to sign up to a direct debit. And a good few people, out of 9,000 subscribers, 4,000 of them wouldn't sign a direct debit because they're fearful of what the banks, you know, it's just, no, that's their prerogative to do it. But there was that fear that they wouldn't sign up a direct debit because it was given access to the bank for what they were paying for. But the thing about it was their salaries and pensions were paid into the bank as well. That was the only way they could do. So they accepted the fact that their money was paid in, but they didn't want to accept the fact that they wanted their direct debits taken out of the bank.
And do you think it's necessary to keep cash in circulation?
Absolutely. Like when I looked in at the possibilities of cash, that the cash is king thing, and like, the thing about it is, it now been dominated by digital transactions and the convenience of credit and debit cards. The age-old adage, cash is king, holds significant relevance. And while the allure of swiping a card for purchases becoming commonplace, the necessity of maintaining liquid cash assets cannot be overstated. And I explored the advantages of having cash readily available and the implications of relying solely on electronic forms of payment. Now, the tangibility of cash offers a tangible form of currency that provides immediate access to funds without the need for technology or intermediaries. And in situations where electronic transactions fail, that could be down to network outages, technical issues, or even power failures, or even, there was a cyber attack. And so on the bank, I remember one of the cash payment systems fell down. I think it was Bank of Ireland. They had a problem. TSB had a problem as well. There was a glitch inside in their thing. Nobody had access to their money for whatever it was a day. Yeah.
That possibility is always there. Now, if you get paid, say, through electronic transfer, and
you get paid on a Thursday, say, and suddenly the bank has gone down, you have no access to your funds. You can't get your funds out. Now, I presume if you go to the bank, maybe the chances are you get the money out there. But if you wanted to go, especially in a cash-strapped society, which we have at the moment, with the expenditure that's out there, high cost of living, the thing about it, cash is king. Because now, in the event of an emergency, like that is an emergency, that you can't get access to cash, and you want to feed your children or whatever the case may be, if you have cash at home, which they're trying to promote now, in Sweden, the central bank inside in Sweden, which was a completely cashless society, and the bank inside in Sweden are now, the central bank are saying that there should be a cash contingency in every household, with a minimum of €50 per adult and €30 per child inside your house that you should hold under the mattress, if we wanted to say, for that type of thing. And that was for emergencies, in the event of a glitch. Now, what they're preparing for, I don't know, but I heard that Cynthia Nivorku, the Fianna Fáil representative in Europe, raised that issue, that they want to bring in the cash is still king, and still king in Ireland, and she wanted to make sure that cash will still be there and available. Now, the other thing that they do, if you go to the ATM machine, or anybody goes to an ATM machine, if you're looking for €60, you get 3 20s. You want €45, you won't get it. You'll get 40 or you'll get 50. There's no fivers.
Yeah.
Now, they're talking about reducing the denomination of the notes that are inside in the machine to include fivers inside in it. That this means then that if you want to go for cash, I'll take 45 instead of going for the 50.
Oh, yeah.
Are you with me? Right. So, and they're looking for that all over, even in England as well. Okay. The £5 note.
Well, we've a lot to come through. Just to bring you a flavour of the text in on this so far. The GAA refused RT permission to show the Tipp Clare game. I'm now not happy about anything related to it in the future. That's from Eamon. The GAA do not give a penny back to clubs. It's a disgrace, and they have upped the insurance fees massively this year. Rural clubs are struggling to keep afloat. Well, I know there is some money that comes in from Munster Council after the matches that they play, and all the clubs get that. Hi, Stephen. Pat is absolutely right. We're not able to keep spending money, and we're going to have to just watch repeat GAA games. And that's from Teresa. Another caller for Philip there. Good morning. Like Philip, I'm an old age pensioner in Killinall, and I certainly would agree about moving RTE to a central location. So a lot of messages in here about cash and just about how society is moving. We're going to take a very quick break. Pat, do stay with us, and we'll be back with more in a moment.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
You're welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Stephen Gleeson here. A lot more messages coming in. Cutting national games weakens our Irish identity over the years, and this will go to be a bigger thing as the years go by. Another one says cashless society is just another cog in monitoring and controlling the masses. And somebody else says, did I hear somewhere that there's a tap and go in some churches? So a lot of people getting in touch, Pat, about the fact that cash is slowly disappearing in our society. Pat Mullaly here with me in the studio. The privacy element of it is gone as well in relation to cash, that you could, make a transaction there. That's gone because the bank will have a record of every transaction.
Every transaction that you do. And also that if you look at the socio-economics, people that are looking at research, they're getting their figures from the central bank, and if they look at say what's happening, a trend in say Tipperary, whatever the case may be, they can actually see how much money you have spare as regards for your social, what much social money is spent.
Yeah.
Right? They can break it down to what
discretionary spending.
Discretionary spending.
Yeah.
They can look at where people are spending their money. They see that and what they've left out of their salary. They know what's going in. They know what's going out. They see what the savings are. So all those figures are available for government. That gives them the opportunity of making decisions on what way to go. Right? That's okay. That's grand. But there's the other aspect of it then, and we just mentioned it there off air, and that was the fact that there's an awful lot of young people out there now going to look for mortgages. And when you go into the bank, or whatever the case may be, and you're looking for a loan, the bank manager is going to look down at all your transactions for the last 6 months, or whatever the case may be, and he's going to see what you spend your money on. Now, God help any young fella that's going out there and using an online betting company, and he's an app on his phone, and he can sit down inside, and the match is on between Tipp and Clare, and he's going to put a fiver on Tipp. Right? That's grand. That's only a small little discretionary spend, as we'll put it that way to you. But if he puts €20 on Tipp and he offloads it against something else, and suddenly he's spending €100 a week on an online betting app, that will definitely affect the mortgage that will be offered to him, if it will be offered. They might decline because they'll say we're taking a punt and that he'll pay back his mortgage. But he's taking a punt on us as well. Do you know what I mean? That we're going to give him the money, and maybe the chances are he has a bet with a guy next door that I might have been in the bank and I got my 30 or 300,000 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So these are the things that there's a digital footprint there on everybody that uses a cashless society. And this is why, like I was talking there off air as regards what the central bank has done, and the central bank has looked at the Department of Finance reports an increase in the use of cash in Ireland in 2025, with 92% of those surveyed saying they use it, cash, but they also use their cards, up from 91% in 2024. Right? Okay. Now this is kind of unusual. When I actually looked at that to research that particular thing, I remember when the COVID was there, it was all tap and go, and they removed the fees for the merchants that you could now spend under €10. Before it was you could only tap and go €10 or up. Yeah. Then they reduced that down, and that there was no fees for the cup of coffee for €4.
Right.
You can go in and just tap and go. And it was tap and go because you weren't putting your print down because you're probably a carrier of whatever disease that was out there at the time, COVID or whatever. It was tap and go, and those things were reduced. Suddenly it got us into a cashless society. If you ask me how much money have I in my pocket this morning, I will tell you I have zero. I have no cash. I don't carry cash. Yeah. I have a few bob at home, but I don't carry cash. I carry a card. Now, the other thing that should be important as regards the security of carrying a card is you should have your card if it is in your wallet, especially with these little sum up cards, or I'm talking about Sum Up now, that's a company, but easy to use digital card transaction machines. They can carry them around in your hand. There's only a small little square, 4 inches square, right? Criminals are using those. They can tap your wallet. Your card is inside your wallet in your back pocket. They can actually go up to it, set it up for a transaction, €20, go around and see which card is around that's ready to set up, tap and go, bang.
Oh, it's a changing
No, it's a changing society, a changing world. People should use an RFID blocker wallet, and you get those little things you put your cards into, and the RFID is blocked.
Just before we finish up, and we're going to be cut for time, but what did you think about that big controversy back in 2015 when Ireland got rid of the 1 and 2 cent coins, and there's less of them in circulation now? It's 5 cents.
Yes, I have a jar of coppers at home. I must bring them to the bank and get rid of them. Yes, that was the thing. Look, I'll put it this way to you: the fiver's gone into the machine, the ATM. It's now you'd be lucky to get a tenner. They were thinking of getting rid of the tenner, so there's only all 20s or 50s. Eventually they might go to the stage that it's only 50s. Well, the way the cost of living is, 20 is no good to you. Do you know what I mean? At one time, £20 was a lot of money. I remember my first week's wages in 1971, £8.13 and 6, and I paid 7 for digs, and I still had money left over on the Thursday. I wasn't prudent, but I wasn't drinking or smoking. You know, those are the little things. Right, go back to the thing about releasing the money. The money, the 1, 5 cents, 2 cents, all gone. I always remember the halfpenny. Remember the little halfpenny came out, the little half penny.
Remember seeing him, yeah.
Half cent, yeah, they came out. Everything was gone. Ben Dunn was the greatest man in the idea of using the 1 cent, the 1 penny. Instead of being a tenner, it was 9.99. Only 9.99. And that sank in with people, right? And then they give the penny back. You thought you were getting something back, and it was less than a tenner. You know?
Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up there. Pat, thank you so much for calling into studio. Some great insights there and some great thoughts. Just to finish on the text machine, cashless transactions allow banks to charge what they like, monitor our spending, and the way things are going, the government could use this information to our disadvantage as well as advantage. We're getting closer and closer to a social credit system where if you don't behave, your access to money could be switched off. So a lot for food for thought there, and that's in from Deirdre on the text machine. Listen, Pat, thanks for joining us this morning in
You're very
studio.
welcome, Stephen, and delighted to meet you.
Likewise, Pat, and we're taking a quick break before news.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
You're very welcome back to Tip Today this morning. I hope you're enjoying the show here with me, Stephen Gleeson, in here today. And our latest topic is that the state examinations are looming even closer, and conversations have already started, as they always do this time of year, around whether or not it is time for a complete overhaul of the exams that mark the start of a young adult's life. And I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Stephen Buckley, Further Education Coordinator in Clonmel at Tipperary Fet College, and Aoife Leahy, Guidance Counsellor in the CBS High School here in Clonmel, and also Chairperson of the Tipperary Guidance Counsellors Association. You're both very welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Stephen.
Aoife, we'll start with you. The Leaving Cert is a huge time in the student's life that's sitting it, the parents, the brothers and sisters, everyone has a part to play, teachers as well. You know, should it be changed? Where is it going? What are your thoughts?
Well, I suppose everyone says when a student sits the Leaving Cert, the whole family goes through it, and everyone feels it. The Leaving Cert is changing, though, the way it's assessed. Now there is a new emphasis on bringing in assessments, continuous assessments. So some of the subjects have changed and the rest are kind of to be changed, I suppose, in the coming years gradually. So I suppose that will take the emphasis off that one exam, final exam, and that it'll be spread out, hopefully over a period of 2 years. That was the thoughts behind it anyway, I think.
Do you feel that's a good thing?
Yeah, I suppose coming into, you know, the future of what's needed in jobs, you know, it's not all one day. So you have to be able to kind of show a number of skill sets. And I suppose that's the aim of the projects, would show those skill sets that you can commit yourself, that you can present, that you can be a good communicator. All of those will be tested in the various subjects, you know, instead of this one final exam, which, you know, can go very well for someone. And then, sure, we know life throws at you that week, something could happen and you mightn't perform to the best of your ability. So from that point of view, spreading it out over 2 years is aiming to be fair for the student, you know.
And what percentage would you have roughly that would be based on the previous couple of years' work ahead of the actual week of the exam?
Yeah, so now what they're moving towards is all the subjects would aim for a 40% project and a 60% final exam. Some of them at the moment are at like 25% project, or some are 20%. Eventually all of them will move to 40%, and then so the final exam will have less of a, there was a time where it was 100% final exam, all in that 2 hour or 2.5 hour period.
And I suppose we do hear that exams go wrong for people and it's just on the day and they're very disappointed they don't get what they want all the time. Like there has to be another route and another way of doing it. And Stephen is here with me, Stephen Buckley. And, if the Leaving Cert does go wrong for someone, and maybe at college you do a year, you discover it wasn't for you, what you were studying, what can people do if something doesn't work out?
Yeah, so I suppose I'm here from Tipperary TB, and we've a number of further aid courses for people that can be done to suit people's lifestyle. So, for example, someone could do a part-time course, or they could do a full-time course. They can do it anywhere in the county. So we've centres from Roscrea to Clonmel to Carrick to Neenah, Tiptown. We're based all over and we cover a wide variety of things. So I suppose if the Leaving Cert doesn't go for someone, or even if someone wants to go to college but they don't know what they want to do, I'd advise them to do a further aid course. Like I always say to people, if someone says they want to be a nurse, how do you know you want to be a nurse? You've no experience of that in school, unless the experience you've had is maybe working or seeing a nurse work. Or if you have a nurse in the family, that's the only experience you have of that.
Yeah, maybe you were in hospital for a week and you admired what they did.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you come into a further aid college with us, you'd go through it for a year. You get the work experience. You get, I suppose, the insight into the lifestyle of a nurse. And what people learn at the end of it is they know it's either for them or not for them. So there's learning in that as well if you find something isn't for you. And you haven't spent the stress of trying to get the accommodation, the money for going to college, and then having to face your parents and potentially tell them, look, this isn't for me. Whereas I suppose I'd always see it as the wiser route, going to the further aid college first and then figuring out if it is for you or not for you. And there's a wide variety of areas you can study. I suppose everything from business to sport, nursing, we'll say healthcare, and some of these there's jobs directly out of them as well. So like we've SNA programs where people can get employment after 1 year. They get a full level 5 qualification and they can get a job straight away after, which is excellent. And
do you find, Stephen, that school probably doesn't prepare everybody for what they meet when they're an adult, because everything is done for you in school? You're packaged, you have your lunchtime set period, then you have the work that the teacher tells you do. You're not really allowed to express your love for learning, and then all of a sudden you're out there, big world, finish school. Do you feel that school could change, that people could make the right decision sooner?
Yeah, and I suppose it is good to see it changing to be more practical. I suppose I'm a woodwork teacher by trade, and I'm used to the setup that's there already. Like we would have had a practical project, a practical day test and an exam previously, whereas this new system is new to a lot of teachers. And I suppose in the further aid game, all our courses are continuous assessment. So there's no module we teach that is 100% an exam. People would have to do an assignment, a project throughout the year. And what we find is it is easier for the students, but it is intense as well, because you have maybe 8 subjects throughout the year and you have 2 and 3 assignments within that subject. So there is a lot of work for the students that they need to keep on top of. So it's going to be a different way of thinking and a different way of learning for both staff and students with this new Leaving Cert.
Yeah, and that change can only be good, I suppose, because a lot of people going back along, it's very broad, the Leaving Cert too. Like if you know that you're interested in woodwork, would it be possible you could do maybe 4 subjects in the Leaving Cert in 20 years' time, only relating to that, and you can broaden your love of that rather than having to do French and Irish in there as well? You know, is there room, if you're suited the languages, maybe you could do French, Italian, Irish, rather than having to pick something else?
That might suit. That might depend on the school as well. So like, because you know yourself, your woodwork rooms, they can only cater for 24. So a school mightn't have the capacity to have 3 or 4 different woodwork rooms. But I suppose some schools do, like say, come to the schools here in town, Raheen and Gaelclosh, Katie, and they have like, the students can go from engineering to woodwork to or construction studies to DCG to something like physics that are all practical subjects. But I suppose they're able to do it because they're smaller numbers and they have the facilities to do it, whereas other schools mightn't have that as well.
And woodwork was kind of one of the, more advanced ones looking back now, because it did have that project-based thing going way back into the last century, whereas other subjects didn't.
Yeah, I suppose like it's a good one in that, like, teaching it, you always find it's nearly a release for the student because they're not sitting down looking up at a blackboard. They're using their hands, they're learning practical skills, and they're making something, and they've something to I suppose you can see the progress with a finished piece in front of you more so than you can with maybe a full copybook, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
It's kind of like apprenticeships as well, isn't it? It's like learning and earning at the same time. Like, I think that's the style that they're going for, is that you're learning and you're applying yourself while you're learning to what you're learning. And like, actually, choice is that's what kind of what you're on about, is that students have so much choice now, and I suppose we give them a lot of choice so that they're not narrowed down too early, that they can make changes and they can go into an area and go, actually, that wasn't for me, and reroute. So it's really good, as Stephen was saying there, that like you have the PLC options, you have the tertiary programs. It's not just all the CEO, and even within the CEO you've lots of choice as well. Like for students with their CEO now, it's reopen again. So now is the time to revisit your CEO up until the 1st of July. Look at what choices you've put down. Maybe you need to add in a few more, maybe you need to take away a few, maybe you need to alter your order of preference. So within that system there's choice, but it's not the only choice. That there's also your PLCs, there's also your tertiary programs, there's also your apprenticeships. And coming from the high school, more and more lads are looking at apprenticeships every year, and that's a good thing, because they're hearing that actually I can make a career out of an apprenticeship and be very successful and build on that. And I think that's a step in the right direction, maybe something different from years ago when there might have been less options available.
And Aoife, are all the teachers on board with this, or do you find from talking to your peers that that some feel this needs to go at a different pace than it is because they're used to working a certain way for most of their working life?
Well, change is always difficult. Like, I don't really like change. We're all kind of like our what we're used to. However, we all have to realise that in society things are changing. The job market is changing, and we have to prepare our students for that. And so whatever we need to do in order to prepare them for the world and be equipped to survive and have a job, then I think it's necessary,
Do you think Ireland should be more in line with what other EU countries are doing, that it's more uniform across the EU rather than an individual country deciding this is how we've done it and this is how we're going to keep doing it?
Well, I think Ireland looks towards other countries for sure. Like, I think we look at Germany has a very good apprenticeship style model, and from my understanding of apprenticeships, they're growing and growing every year. And that's a good thing. So they're looking at other countries and seeing what's successful in other countries, and they're trying to make changes for that. Yeah,
and just on apprenticeships, I suppose when people hear of apprenticeships, they think of the craft skills and people working on the building site, but they're changing now. So you can do like apprenticeships in accounting. So there's different alternatives for people there. If they just look up apprenticeships.ie, they'll find all the options there for people. And just on the tertiary options, like, that might be a new word to people as well. So it's a different access route to college. You have tertiary pathways. So in Tipperary here, there's the nursing, and there's now a teaching tertiary pathway, where that is, you do a 1 year, say, PLC style course, and then you go into first year of TUS or Mary I, depending on what you're doing.
In Thurles, is it, or Clonmel as well?
There's ones in Clonmel and Thurles at the minute. So in Clonmel we've digital arts. In Thurles there is physical education, strength and conditioning, so you can go on to the strength and conditioning courses in Thurles. And then in Nina there is going to be the primary school teaching pathway, and in Roscrea there's going to be the nursing pathway, the mental health nursing pathway. So there are different options for people, and you're not relying on CEO points. And I suppose the tertiary degree programs are the ones that are up and running already, which is the digital arts and the sports, the strength and conditioning. What that is you do first year with a further ed college, and then you go into second year of a degree program in Tous, in Thurles or in Clonmel. So it's a fantastic opportunity for people, and I suppose with it, your first year in the further ed college is a broad, I suppose you're getting a flavour for all the different courses you can do, but in second year then you specialise. So in sports you could specialise in maybe strength and conditioning or sports performance. In digital arts you could look at the animation side, or you could look at the gaming side maybe in second year. So it gives people that broad range in first year, and then they get to specialise in second year.
Isn't that brilliant, Stephen? Because people don't have to go to Dublin, they don't have to go other places. They can learn in Tipperary.
Yeah, look, there's so many options right on your doorstep, and there's so many options you can get from, I suppose, like some of the course titles. You need to look at the modules, and the modules will give you different options as well. So like I always give people the example as well of, like, someone might want to be a physio. They could actually look at something like the nursing program there, because there's a lot of modules on that would relate to physiotherapy. And you get a good background in physiotherapy before you go into it as well. Because I suppose some of that background, while the school system is great, you mightn't always get it. Whereas in a further ed college, you'll get that background knowledge, or that base you need maybe for college before you go there, because it is a steep learning curve when you go to college. And I suppose like you're one of maybe 100 in a class. Whereas in a smaller learning environment, you're one of maybe 24.
And I guess that's where you come in, Aoife, because career guidance, you're going to direct students who don't know that at the age of 17.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what students need to be aware of, is that there are supports in every school to help. Guidance counsellors are there. It's just a chat. And also there are supports in colleges and further education. There's always guidance counsellors there as well. So, and also when the CEO is released, they have a helpline and there's guidance counsellors on phones there. So, just to have those conversations, and maybe it's just realising, sometimes it doesn't work out for students, and sometimes it's about then saying, right, what's my plan B? And that might have the plan B might be way better in the long run. It's like going to Dublin and going straight on the motorway, it's the way I say it. Or sometimes we get lost and we have to go a different path, but we discover a lovely town on the way and we grab a cup of coffee or whatever. And sometimes that's what life does, is that it throws you a curveball, and it's like, actually, I'll do the PLC now for a year. It wasn't my first plan, but do you know what? It'll bring me to where I need to go in the end. It's a longer route. It might be slightly more costlier, but I might be a better person from it, and I might be a bit more mature, and I kind of have time then to think, actually, this is for me. And so it's always to say, it's not, that there are plenty of choices out there, and that's a good thing for students, and you will get to where you need to go eventually. And sometimes if you don't get there straight away, that's probably even better.
And there's probably a lot of parents listening here that are quite concerned coming up, and maybe, their Leaving Cert student has their heart set on something, and, you may get it or you may not. Yeah.
And I think even bringing it back the day of the results, some students can be absolutely delighted, and other students can be very disappointed. So from a parent's point of view, the parent has to have a plan on that day. We were going here for lunch, or we're going here for dinner, and are we still going to go if our student is very disappointed? What are we going to say to them? And it's important to kind of think about these things before they happen. But it's not the end of the world. There are always options there, and maybe to reach out, seek supports in your school or seek supports in your college. When a student starts college or goes to college, go to those supports that are there and tell them, even the first few weeks of a college course, a student can go, God, this isn't the course for me at all. Speak to someone, go to the supports, because within colleges they can actually be very good and supportive that way as well.
And I guess that day is probably, the Leaving Cert results day is probably the day you want to get rid of when you're reforming the Leaving Cert too, though, because you want to know that you have a certain amount of points in the bag, and that it's not one day that will define your future and make or break you. And I mean, if it goes badly, it's something a student always remembers.
Yeah. I actually that's probably why I'm guidance counsellor myself. My own leaving cert didn't go too well and I was very disappointed and I remember it a lot. But actually now I look at it and I go, God, life threw me that for a reason. And you kind of end up in different places where you didn't expect, but actually it was the making of me in one sense, do you know. So I always kind of feel for those students where they go, geez, I was just thinking of plan A and I had all the accommodation set for that. That's the other thing, you know, have your plan A, but also seriously consider plan B and, you know, go, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to do this, and that mightn't be a bad thing either.
Great stuff. And Stephen, we'll let you wrap it up here.
Yeah, just on the supports as well, just I suppose we deal with people after leaving cert mainly, and I just want to say that like Aoife was saying, talk to someone. You can go back to your school as well. Like we talk to guidance counsellors on a regular in September especially, and they get students coming back to them, but just so every student knows that they can go back to their guidance counsellor in school and go through the options with them. So there is fantastic supports here in Tipperary for people, and I suppose like Aoife was saying, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't go good for you. There's loads of other options there, and there's loads of different ways to get to where you want to go.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you, and some excellent points made by both. Stephen Buckley, Further Education Coordinator in Tipperary Feck College in Clonmel, and Aoife Lahy, Guidance Counsellor in the CBS and also Chairperson of Tipp Guidance Counsellors. Thanks for joining us this morning in studio, and if there's any messages in, we'll forward it to you and you can get in touch with them that way. Thanks again.
Perfect.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
You're very welcome back to Tip Today with me, Stephen Gleeson, in here this morning, and I'm delighted now to be joined by John G. O'Dwyer as it is time for the next instalment in the story of Ireland, and John G. O'Dwyer is here in studio with me. Good morning, John.
Great to be with you again, Stephen.
Great to have you here, John, and today we're talking about cultural revival in Ireland. We've been talking about GAA Go and we've been talking about RTE and all these things that are part of modern Ireland and modern day Ireland. But to go back to it in history, the cultural revival was huge from an Irish identity point of view.
Yeah, you're going to like the bit this morning because there's going to be a good lot of the cultural revival is about the GAA. But if you look at this then, what you're talking about is the Ireland of about 1880 was massively changed from the Ireland before the famine. The population had almost halved. There was much more land to go around. And a very important, I spoke to Fran about this, you had a successful land war. And that gave tenants, they could no longer be fired from, they could no longer be evicted from their holdings. They could sell on their land, which meant that they had a valuable asset and they had free sale, fixity of tenure on their land. So that made them a lot more comfortable, I suppose. And if you're talking before the famine, had you tried to set up, we'll say, the GAA before the famine, total failure, of course, for a couple of reasons. One is when people are starving, they're not likely to be interested in, having a few pucks. But as well as that, the GAA was hugely dependent, as well as that, on the rail system. So when the GAA was set up, your man Cusack said that it spread across the country like a prairie fire. Well, it spread like a prairie fire along the rail lines because you couldn't have inter-county competition unless you had relatively cheap travel. So the thing is, I just put a question to you here. I don't know, you probably know it better than I would. How many GAA clubs are in Tipp now?
Just off the top of my head, I would say 79 to 81, so in around 80 GAA clubs.
That doesn't sound the top of your head. Exactly, you know exactly. Well, I'll take it. I'll talk to us around that. Now, if you time before the GAA, what was the big sport in Tipperary? It was cricket. The number of cricket clubs in Tipperary before the GAA was founded was 100. 130.
That's incredible.
Incredible, isn't it? People don't know that. Now, it would have been slightly different. It would have been some way around the army, the garrisons who were here, and the ascendancy. But there was also a growing, better off Catholic middle class, and they were delighted to play cricket. So both, will say, the main founders of the GAA, Cusack and Davin, they had started off by dabbling in cricket. So, English games were coming into Ireland in a huge way, and Cusack then had the idea, he got fed up with cricket, and he decided, I'll de-anglicize it. We need to bring back our national sports and pastimes, hence the meeting in Thurles.
Okay, and that took place, of course, 1884, Hayes' Hotel.
Yes.
And that changed Irish cultural identity, just began to change during that period then, John.
Huge change then, absolutely. But the interesting thing about this meeting was, Cusack was, a man who didn't do things by halves. So when he set up this meeting to revive Irish sports and pastimes, he wrote to all the great and good across Ireland. It was in nearly all the papers, and he had Morris Davin, who was the greatest athlete of his time, very famous, like having maybe Brian O'Driscoll there. And do you know how many people at the meeting? Have you any idea?
No, I don't know.
It was the maximum that was there was 14 after all of that. And most people think that Cusack probably tried to up the figures a bit. We're only certain that there were 7 there. So a lesser determined man than Cusack might have packed the whole thing up and says this is the end of it. But he was there at the right time. The railways were there. People were better off, and it did spread all across the country. And the next meeting was in Cork. And I think what's interesting, and we're probably lamenting at the moment the fact that Tipperary have lost, but whether it was planned or not, it was based on a regional structure. That's how it evolved. So if you take, we'll say, if you go to Liverpool, there's no line where you say, well, now this is where we stop supporting Liverpool, and this is where we stop supporting Everton. But if you look at, if Tipp and Kilkenny are in an All-Ireland, right, and you're going up for the match and you go to Urlingford, you'll know the second you cross Fenner Hill fairly fast. So in other words, it was based on the structure bequeathed to us by the British. Firstly, the counties came in the 1600s from the British, and later the parishes. But it was all based on a regional structure. So the result is that almost at birth, you were expected to be a supporter of Tipperary or Kilkenny or Borlahan or Upperchurch or whatever it was. And so you got it. So there was it was the most vast sporting organised. You can just imagine it. When the population of this country in 1960 was less than 3 million, the attendance at the All-Ireland football final in Croke Park, now, how they crammed them in, I don't know, but 90,000 people. Almost one person in every 30 in the country was at the match. So it just shows. Now, you talk about the Max Cup final in England, there might be 70 or 80,000 there, country of nearly 70 million. Yeah. Huge. So it was just based on the regional loyalties. I think that was the important thing.
That proportion is staggering.
Isn't it?
I suppose that it's why it's so strong here, as you said, the railway lines, the history that has built up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing about, I think, Cusack and then Davin was you had to pick your time. Anything you do in history, any innovation, you can be too early or too late. And even though the meeting wasn't well attended, they hit the absolutely right time when people are a bit better off and they were thinking of national identity. And there's nothing better, to promote Irish national identity, nothing stronger than Gaelic games.
And I suppose you have that Irish nationalism, elements of community life as well. And, in writing then things changed as well.
Yeah, well, they did, absolutely. And then you came on, then there was another great, and it was exactly the opposite almost to the GAA, and that was the Irish literary revival. And you had people like Yeats, Lady Gregory, George Russell, Millington Singh, and what they all had in common is they were all Protestants, but they became interested in the ordinary Irish people in the way no writer in the past had. If you took Goldsmith, he was Irish, but he wrote really about kind of the upper class, really, and to a large extent English upper class. The same thing about Oscar Wilde, the same thing about George Bernard Shaw. Now, there was a few people who wrote about Ireland, but they wrote in a kind of a nationalistic way. Thomas Davis, The West's Awake, a nation once again. James Carnes Mangan created a character, the Dark Rosaleen, which is the personification of Ireland. But nobody had any interest in the ordinary peasants. That was the thing. Up to the time of the literary revival. And these Protestants who were from the ascendancy, both Lady Gregory took it so seriously, and John Millington saying, learned Irish so they could speak with ordinary people and record how they spoke, which is an incredible thing. And that then was the Irish literary revival. All these things were happening at the one time. There's one train, Irish literary revival, one train is the GAA, but ultimately they're all going the same way.
So culturally, the world as we knew it back then, from an Irish point of view, was changing and changing fast.
Yeah,
there was Irish plays with Irish teams, all that became popular.
Yeah, we'll say Yeats then, they were funny for Protestant people, they were very nationalistic. And so what they did was, they then came together with Lady Gregory and they founded a huge thing was the Abbey Theatre, right? And that's very interesting because that was a national theatre then. And Yeats wrote a play called Kathleen Ní Húlaháin. And that really is, he's a personification of Ireland again. It's an old woman who comes into a wedding and she laments the fact that she lost her 4 sons, but those are, of course, her 4 provinces, and she wants somebody to fight for them to get them back. And anyway, the groom runs away and doesn't marry the
4 green fields.
Goes off to fight for the 4 green fields, and straight away then she's rejuvenated. She becomes a young girl. Now, it mightn't be a play that will work today, but people loved it, and they poured into the Abbey Theatre. This was the real Ireland. But an interesting thing was that person who played the lead role in that was Maud Gonne. And you think she's the ultimate Republican, Yeats' love interest. But when you look at it, she had no Irish connections, born in England, came to Ireland, the daughter of a senior army officer, attended all the balls in Dublin, and then saw an eviction, and apparently that radicalised her. She wanted an Irish Republic. Which came ultimately. The interesting thing is, if you think about it, she probably would not have been welcome in the Irish Republic of the early Irish Republic of the 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s. Why? Because she had 2 children outside of wedlock.
Okay.
So if she was actually a Catholic, she was a Protestant. If she was actually a Catholic and had been born 50 years later, in the new state that she had helped to create, she could have been run off to a mother and baby home.
Well, that's a completely different change, isn't it?
I think you try to look under the skin of history. That doesn't mean that she wasn't committed to nationalism and didn't, leave a huge positive mark on Ireland. But that's the way the Republic changed. And now, of course, these days nobody would have the slightest interest in, who was in a relationship and who isn't and who has children.
Oh, it's fascinating. Okay, we're going to take a very quick break here on Tipp FM. Back with more from John G after this.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1-800-938-007. Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tipptoday@tippfm.com.
You're very welcome back to Tipp Today with me, Stephen Gleeson. John G. O'Dwyer is here in studio with me. And John, before the break, we were talking about Maud Gonne and another name that pops up and up around that time, probably the first big female in Irish politics to some degree, Constance Markievicz.
Yeah, first woman elected, although of course she didn't take her seat, to the English House of Commons. So these were the radical women that were around at that stage. But I mentioned something else too. The Irish people at the time, they had a belief, these nationalists, that the Irish were somehow a kind of a chosen race, that they were superior to others, and above all they should be full of virtue and nobility and respectability. And then when Synge went out and met ordinary people and wrote what they were really like in the Playboy of the Western World. He wrote about a character called Peggy and Mike, and she wasn't the idea of what a woman should be. Countess Markievicz wasn't either, but she wasn't the idea of what a woman should be. She was bawdy, she was aggressive, and she kind of fell in love with a man who pretended he had killed his own father. That didn't suit the view of Irish women. right? And Countess Markievicz probably wouldn't have fitted into that either. It didn't suit him, and there was a riot in the Abbey Theatre in 1907 when Synge's play was produced first. And another thing they objected to hugely was there was a mention in the play of a women's nightshirt. They called it a shift, and this caused absolute outrage. So you can see the Irish nationalists, in a way, had all the conservatism carried with them of the Victorian period in England, yes. But Countess Markievicz, they were the leaders. In Nini Nahearn, they set that up, and they were the Republican women. But what's very interesting was they had to set up in Nini Nahearn because the IRB and afterwards the Irish Volunteers did not accept women as members. So they just set up their own organisation.
And the Irish language revival was taking place at that time. It was really feeding into that sense of being Irish.
Absolutely. 1893, setting up of Conran na Gaeilge. Again, the idea to de-anglicise Ireland and bring Irish back as a language. So we have to say straight out that this failed. 130 years later, we're still speaking in English here. That didn't work. But what was really important there was the classes brought in people who were politically aware. And within those classes, then, they tended to get radicalised. So the people, their first introduction to republicanism for Eamon de Valera was at these classes. He also met his wife Sinead. Also Michael Collins over in London was going into Conran na Gaeilge classes, and that's where he somehow met other fellow travellers and became a Republican. Eamon Kent was much the same, and of course Pádraig Pearse all started their Republican journey with the Irish language. So it was incredible the influence that had. And what you would call that is it's a process of radicalisation. Radicalisation means that you are picking up ideas that political change can be brought about through violence. Now, the same as ISIS today. Now, I'm not comparing the two because as a cultural thing we would say, well, this was good radicalisation and ISIS is bad radicalisation. That's the way we would look at it in the West. But there's very much of a value judgment. It is all radicalisation, and there was a big radicalisation taking place in Ireland that ultimately found its expression in 1916. But the roots came to Conran na Gaeilge and the Irish language.
Oh, that's fascinating. And what about elections and people, you know, that were kind of laying the basis for politics in the future around that era?
Yeah, up to that, local government, you had grand juries, and basically they were people who were selected by the local sheriff. They tended to be all Protestants, all major landowners. They had complete control of the system. And then it's not mentioned a lot, but I think it's huge. 1899, we had the first elections for local authorities. And of course, Catholics are in a huge majority in the country, and the local authorities then became largely Catholic. Go ahead, yeah.
Tipperary County Council and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely one of them. Absolutely every one of them. And they would have dominated by what was then called the Irish. It was a Conservative party, the Irish Parliamentary Party. But then, 20 years later, Sinn Féin, there was a huge support for Sinn Féin in a general election. And after that, nearly all the councils, except in the Unionist Northwest, that were elected were controlled by Sinn Féin. And the New Dáil, which had refused to take its seat in London and met in Dublin, they gave their allegiance to that. And they became the foot soldiers then, and they became politically aware as well. And then when the War of Independence broke out, they became a thorn in the side of the British government. And just to think of it, you know, we don't think much of that. That's why then the Lord Mayor of Cork, Tomás McCurtain, was murdered by the RIC. George Clancy in Limerick, he was the Mayor of Limerick, was murdered. And then the replacement for McCurtain, Terence McSweeney, he actually died on hunger strike. So there was this huge tension between the two, but it built up political awareness and gave huge support then to the New Dáil.
Yeah, a lot of parallels with the Middle East currently. And like, I suppose when you look at it, a lot of the land was still in English names and it was English land. So there had to be a shift there to get the land back for the Irish.
Yeah, and that was done actually by a Conservative government, surprisingly. Now, there had had been land acts before that, but the idea was that any landlord who wanted to sell, they would give a loan to the tenants to buy the land, but the loans were far too expensive and the repayments. So they didn't really work. Only the very best off got land back. But then George Wyndham, and I always think, we have people we wouldn't put up a statue to, like Cromwell and Trevelyan. But if we're ever putting up a statue to an Englishman, which probably I can't see it happening, it should be George Trevelyan. Very little known, but he made such a huge change because he brought in a scheme where whatever rent you were paying, you could.
George who?
George Wyndham, the Wyndham Land Acts. Yeah. George Wyndham, he brought in a scheme where the land of Ireland would be returned to the Irish people. But the interesting thing, it would not be expensive. You would be 20 to 30% less to own the land than you were already paying in rent. It was a no-brainer, and within 10 years, more than half the land in the country, 11.5 million acres, was returned to Irish people, and that created the small farm structure that persisted in Ireland then for a tremendously long time. And our older listeners, when they're young, they'll probably remember people complaining about this. A bill used to come in the 1960s called the annuities. And that was relatively small, but it was the repayment for buying back the land from the landlords. But it was the British government made up the difference between what the tenants could pay and what the landlords, the price of the land. So, I mean, that was huge. That was the biggest social change, and it's often very much missed in Ireland.
That's absolutely fascinating. So that the 11.5 million acres was effectively available for sale for Irish small farmers.
It wasn't actually for sale. You bought your own land. Somebody else could. Now, you could then sell it on afterwards. But initially, you came along, you got in you signed up for the Wyndham scheme, and then at less rent, about 20 to 30% less rent than you were already paying, you now became the owner of the land. But you had to keep paying this, which wasn't called rent anymore. It was called an annuity. And I think a lot of our older listeners will remember the annuities in Ireland, because that was in the noughties, the 1900s, and I think it was about a 70-year spread out over about 70 years, so it went on up into about 1970.
That must have given a great confidence to the people back at the turn of the 1900s. Do you know that? To say this is now our land.
It was incredible. It gave him status, but it also made him very conservative, because now they wanted to hold on to their land. So, we'll be talking about that probably with Fran later on, but some of the radical ideas like James Connolly and those who would have believed in the nationalisation of land, because he was essentially a supporter of of communism and Marxism. If the 1716 Rising had been successful, I don't know how all that would have been sorted out, because remember, in the Russian Revolution, all the land was actually nationalised, so it would all have gone back to the state again. So they were very conservative. The Catholic Church believed very strongly in private property, and therefore they were happy to give their support to the Catholic Church as a bulwark against those kind of ideas.
John G, that's fascinating. That is super stuff. Listen, thank you so much for calling into studio today.
It's great to have a chat about it, yes.
Great stuff.
Can I mention something else then?
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
Just to say, just before you go, that next Tuesday, we're still trying to get the Irish language back, and I'm a small bit involved, but I'll be doing a walk into Derrynaflan, a history walk, but it'll be called Mascon Bearla Gaeliga. We'll be using, and I'll have an archaeologist with me as well, who is a fluent Irish speaker. We'll be using Irish and English. Now, if you want to come along and see the language being spoken, no pressure on anybody to speak it, but you can listen to it being spoken, and if you don't understand something, everybody will be happy to talk in English as well as that. But that's going out next Tuesday. If you want to come along, 6:30 at the Horse and Jockey, the back car park of the Horse and Jockey Hotel. It's an easy walk, 2 kilometres in, flat walk, 2 kilometres out. You can do it in trainers, and about a half an hour around the site. And there's a lot more than the Derrynaflan Chalice there. So I look forward to that. So everyone is welcome, and no pressure to speak Irish, but you will hear it spoken.
Oh, that's fantastic. Next Tuesday evening.
At 6:30, back car park, the Horse and Jockey.
Great stuff. John G, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a quick break, then it'll be news at 11.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Well, you're very welcome back to Tip Today with me, Stephen Gleeson. And very sad news there that Liz Howard has passed away. May she rest in peace. Liz was lovely to meet at matches and often had good chats when Tipperary were playing. She was always supporting the blue and gold, and may she rest in peace. And we'll have a tribute to Liz tomorrow following that sad news. Well, as you know, over the past few months we've been inundated with correspondence surrounding the water supply project for the Eastern and Midlands region, and the project proposes to abstract water from Partine Basin upstream of Partine Weir on the lower River Shannon, utilising a maximum of 2% of the long-term average flow at Partine Basin. Water will be treated at a brand new water treatment plant near Bird Hill, and I'm delighted to be joined here in studio today by Senior Programme Manager with the Water Supply Project Eastern and Midlands region. Here in studio is Gary Gibson. Good morning to you, Gary.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, good to have you here. This is, I'm sure you're aware, a hugely emotional topic for a lot of listeners, and it changes how they see their lives up there relating to water and relating to where they're from. And can you tell us a little about the current status of the project and potential timelines in relation to the Partine Basin?
Well, this is a really important project. It is of strategic national importance for the entire country. It's not just a Dublin-focused project. It is across the entire region, including Tipperary as well. It will serve areas in Tipperary too. So again, the issue we have is that large parts of the East and Midlands are water stressed. So the Greater Dublin area in the east and large towns in the Midlands such as Tullamore and Mullingar, in these areas, demand for water outstrips what we can sustainably provide, and we need a solution to that problem. So we've looked at this over many years, and we've considered over 1,000 options for the wider region, and we keep coming back to the Shannon as the most sustainable source. So again, as you mentioned earlier, the plan is to take a small amount of water from the existing reservoir at Partine Basin, and to, as you said, to treat it near Bird Hill, and then to pipe it to a new reservoir near Peamount in South Dublin. And we also provide offtakes for communities along the route in Tipperary and in Offaly and in Westmeath. But as you mentioned, as I already mentioned, it really is a project of strategic national importance. It allows the entire region to grow, and it's something like we need to do for the benefit of the entire country. In terms of status, we recently submitted probably what was one of the largest planning applications in the history of the state to a Commission Pleanála. That went in December of 2025. That's being considered by Commission Pleanála at the moment. Once they do their work, and it's as I said, it's the largest planning application in the history of the state. It was over 30,000 pages long. They do their work on that, and hopefully they will come up with a decision late this year, early next year. And in the event of a positive outcome, we are also in the process of trying to procure contractors to actually build the project in due course. And we'd like, all going well, we will be starting work in 2028. It would take about 5 years to build, and the project could be completed by 2032.
And are you aware of the concerns about the abstraction and the impact on Lough Derg that people have been raising around here locally?
Yeah, we're aware of people's concerns, and as part of that planning application I mentioned earlier, we've submitted a comprehensive environmental impact assessment report that sets out, how the project would impact on the environment. And in terms of the impact on on Lough Derg, we've included in that report very detailed modelling demonstrating the impact of the proposed abstraction on levels in the lake and on water quality. And that demonstrates, and that's publicly available for people to see, that demonstrates that even in the worst drought event on record, which is in 2018, even if that was made worse by climate change, that even if we had to abstract at peak during that event, that the ESB could maintain water levels in Lough Derg and Partine Basin within the normal operating range that they always have done, and that there would be negligible impact on water quality.
Well, we're going to see possible temperatures up in the mid-30s next week, and that's likely to become the reality for the Irish Global weather systems are just the way we see it here in Ireland, that's possible going forward to be normal temperatures for the summer perhaps. So there's a lot of things to take into account here. One that really crops up again and again is the fact that there's so much leakage in the water system, not just in Dublin but nationwide. But in relation to this project, what are you doing to address that leakage in Dublin?
Well, we are addressing leakage nationally, and leakage reduction is really important for us. Nationally, we have reduced leakage from 49% to 36%, and in the Dublin area it's been reduced from 37% to 30%. So that's really good progress in leak reduction, but we are continuing to invest in leakage reduction. Leakage reduction is difficult, it's hard work, it's disruptive work, and it's costly work, but we will continue to invest in that. But even if we could reduce leakage to the lowest possible level, we still need a new source. We need an alternative source of water for the Dublin area and the Midlands areas. So leakage reduction alone isn't a solution to the problem. We've taken into account ambitious leakage reduction targets in the estimate for the amount of water we need for the project. So it's taken into account, but really it's a case of both. We need to continue to invest significantly in leakage reduction across the entire country and in Dublin, and invest in this project.
A lot of local experts here are saying that leakage actually went up though in 2022, 23, 24. When are you going to see the benefits of what you're speaking about?
It's a challenging, leakage reduction is challenging. As I said, it's difficult work, it's just disruptive work, particularly in cities where there's a lot of other services and utilities and buses and just Lewis lines in Dublin in particular. So it is challenging work. And again, the growth in the economy has presented some challenges to leakage reduction in that period. But we will start to see those figures come down. But even as I said, with those leakage reduction taking place, we still need a new source, and the project is still needed.
Yeah, and very few pipes seem to be being replaced. One stat that I have is 0.4% of the pipes are being replaced. Do you not need a way bigger percentage? Because a lot of these pipes were put down, by the English who were here back in the 19th century, and it's very slow, the replacement rate of those.
We are investing significantly in leakage reduction, so we're going to spend another €2 billion in leakage reduction over the coming years. So again, it is a focus for us. We do as much as we can. Again, it is just disruptive work, and we do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but it's not possible to replace all the pipes in one go. It just wouldn't be possible to do that.
And how has the engagements that you've made with the landowners in the area that will be affected by this without a doubt, be it construction, be it delays on the roads, and the actual project itself, and the impact to wildlife, the impact to the people living there, and all of that? How have you found all that? Where are you with that? Are you talking to them?
Yeah, we've had significant community engagement throughout the life of the project. In particular for landowners, working with these landowners is really important to us, and we're aware we're putting a kind of a large pipe through their lands. So we've developed a kind of a comprehensive, handbook to demonstrate to landowners how we will build the works to minimise the impact and return the land to its condition after we leave. So we want to, as much as possible, work with landowners, and over 80% have signed up to a voluntary package to acquire the right to install the pipe in their lands along for the entire pipeline length. So we're really happy with that result for the project, that there is a sort of a really good uptake on that sort of offer to accept a whaling package voluntarily, and we're delighted with that so far.
We're often a bit worried here. We see all these costs running in. We see the hospital in Dublin and the huge costs of that, and it's been felt 20 years later. It's still not built, still not open. The Lewis in Dublin, are we going to be talking about this in 20 years? Why is it still delayed? Why is it not built? And why is the cost rising all the time? What are you doing to address that?
No, well, we've come up with a really robust cost estimate for the project. The core cost estimate is €4.6 billion. That's a lot of money, and I accept that. But at that level, for every 10, we've included in our reports a cost benefit analysis that says for every euro invested in the project, there's €10 of benefit to the country. And Ishgaren has a really good track record in delivering infrastructure projects. We spend about €1 billion a year on infrastructure projects, and they come in on time and on budget. So we know what we're doing in terms of investing in capital infrastructure. So we're confident we can deliver this project to that budget on time, as I said, by 2032.
There's a lot of text messages coming in and things, and I suppose despite the heavy annual investments, a massive volume of drinking water is lost daily due to, the age of the supply and the cracked public mains. So should the focus not be to fix these first instead of spending money on a new project when they're not completely fixed?
As I said earlier, it's really both. We need to do both projects, and we need to invest in leakage reduction, and we'll continue to do so. And we need to invest in this project and continue to deliver this project. As I said, it's right. Leakage reduction is hugely important, but the answer is we need to do both.
And where's all the water going in Dublin? Because you've still got less than 2 million people, just assuming that 100,000 didn't sign in the last census, which can often happen. They can come into a house and the census papers are left there and nobody signs them, or no one has any record of these people. So assuming that the population could be up to 2 million, how is it so difficult to get the water for that many people locally?
Well, the problem is that we actually abstract at present. We 85% of about 1.7 million people in the region are supplied by the Liffey. And we abstract up to 40% of the flow from the Liffey for the needs of the region. That's unsustainable. We can't continue to do that. We need to take water. We need to find a new source. And by comparison with that 40% for the Liffey, which is a very small water body, we're at peak. We're only proposing to take 2% of the average long-term flow in the Shannon, and so that's a far more sustainable source for water for the region, rather than we can't take any more from the Liffey. It wouldn't be sustainable.
But you're aware how controversial it is, really.
No, I understand people's concerns, but again, we're hoping to reassure people that this isn't this shouldn't be a controversial project. We have engaged with the community, as I mentioned earlier. We have community clinics in Tipperary and along the pipeline route. We've been holding them over recent months, and we will continue to hold those over recent times. And we want to engage with people. We want to hear their concerns, and we want to listen to them, and we want to try and reassure them that this is the right project. As I said, it's a really important national project to allow the country to continue to grow. As I said, there will be significant benefits for Tipperary as well in terms of areas in Tipperary served by the project, but also during construction there'll be well over 1,000 people working on the project. Many of those jobs will be in Tipperary as well, where we will build one of the largest water treatment plants in the country and sections of the pipeline and some other infrastructure sites for the project. So it's a really important project for the entire country.
Okay. And Gary, a lot of text messages in here about it, and a lot of people just in touch, and we've already heard about algae bloom. It's been found in Lough Derg. Is the waterway not under enough stress? That's one message in.
Yeah, well, public health is our number one priority, and it's really important to us. Algal blooms can occur in water sources across the country, including Lough Derg, but we treat those by monitoring the water supplies and by having effective water treatment in place, so whereby we can treat the water to these really high kind of EU drinking water standards, so the water is safe to drink, so that's not a concern.
Okay, another one in. Curlew birds have also been sighted along the pipeline route. How can we be assured our flora and fauna, like these type of rare birds, won't be affected?
Yeah, well, again, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a really detailed environmental impact assessment report that took into account all kind of biodiversity and flora and fauna at the abstraction point and along the pipeline route, and that's detailed in the EIAR, as we call it, that's included with the planning application that's publicly available, and we think that demonstrates that there is no significant impact from the project.
Okay, you mentioned the huge sums that's involved in building this. If the price of oil goes up, if the cost of electricity goes up, if the costs double, is this project still worth doing?
Well, we don't anticipate to be the case. I mean, the estimate that we have for the project, it takes into account inflation and some uncertainties, but the project is needed, and we have to get on. We need to deliver it, and with these projects, the cheapest time to deliver them is as soon as possible, because with delays, costs will eventually arise. So we need to do it as soon as we can.
And is there any argument that people can make that would convince you that this should not proceed?
Well, we think it's so important that we do this. As I said, large parts of the entire East and Midlands region, and again, up to 50% of the population of the state, this project has the capacity to provide this really kind of secure and stable water supply for those people. So we need to kind of deliver it. We need to get on with it, and we need to do it as soon as we can. It's really important for us to do that.
Another text in. What about rainwater? can you not gather that because enough falls in Ireland?
Well, again, we've looked at all possible options for that. And in many ways, rivers do gather rainwater and lakes do gather rainwater, and that's the source we use. But again, we've looked at all these options. As I mentioned, as we started for the entire region at over 1,000 kind of what we called unconstrained options, which means that they some of them weren't even realistic. But we narrowed that down. We kept coming back to the option that the Shannon was the best source. That methodology and that sort of assessment was kind of independently reviewed by the CRU, the Commission for the Regulation of Utilities. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but they looked at that again and they endorsed that sort of methodology that assessed that the best solution was the Shannon project.
Okay, and have you got international advice in relation to this, like what's the best practice and what's done abroad?
Well, we looked at that in detail, and we have a team of international experts kind of supporting us on the project, and they're helping us with the progression of the project. And so we do have, we know again, but Ishgarin, we have a track record in delivering these projects internally as well. That in Ireland we're good at delivering these projects, and we know what we're doing. But we do have international support as well.
Okay, we're running out of time with this one, but just a couple more questions that I'll bring you, Gary, that we've had here. How can it be justified to abstract additional water from the River Shannon for transfer to Dublin during drought conditions when the ESB already has to shut down hydroelectric turbines in dry summer months just to maintain the statutory minimum compensation flow of 10 cubic metres per second through the old Shannon channel at O'Brien's Bridge and Castle Connell? One for you there.
Yeah, again, as I said, that's a really good question. The modelling we've included, as I said, does assess that drought event, and essentially in a drought event we would abstract from storage within Partine Basin, and the modelling shows that we could abstract the peak amount, and the ESB could maintain levels within the normal operating band as they normally do, while the statutory minimum compensation flow is maintained down the old Shannon, and we've modelled that, and that demonstrates that can happen.
Okay, our text machine has lit up, as you can imagine, because it's such an emotional topic for people, and it's great that you're here to address some of these concerns. What happens if the planning is not successful?
Well, again, if it's under consideration by Commission Planal at the moment, we're hopeful and confident of a positive outcome to that process. If on Commission Planal have further questions for us, we'll address them. But really, this is the only solution. This is the best solution for the needs of the country as such. So we do have to we would have to look at why if that eventuality arose. We don't think it will. We'd look at what we need to remedy to address people's concerns as such.
Okay, and final one here. What size will the pipe be that's going to be put in?
The pipe itself is 1.6 metres in diameter for its entire length, so it's a large pipe. But it's, again, this is something Ishgarin does, not quite the length of this pipe, but we do install pipes at this size, albeit over smaller lengths, in various places across the country. So we're well used to doing this kind of work.
And another one, above ground, below ground?
It's all buried. It's good, but the pipe is all buried below ground. So once we install the pipe and we reinstate the land, you won't even see that it's been there in a couple of years' time.
How low down will that be below the surface?
The minimum cover is about 1.2 metres, but the depth varies over the length of the pipe. So it'll be deeper in parts, but the minimum is 1.2 metres.
And is that safe then, that there's not like water pressure escaping or anything like that?
No, it's a welded steel pipe. It's a very secure pipe, so there's no issues about the pipe bursting or leaking like that.
Okay, well, there's a lot more texts coming through here, so what I might do is pass them on to you, Gary, and you can get in touch with listeners, or else you can give us answers and we'll read them out and go through them with listeners, what answers you've given us for us. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to, but I would maybe your listeners, if they had questions, if they would go to our community clinics, and we have a team available on the ground to meet people and answer their questions, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions they have.
Great stuff. When are those clinics taking place?
They're over the coming months. They're along the pipeline route. I have to confirm the actual dates in the local area with you. I don't have the exact dates to hand.
You'll let us know.
Yeah,
anyway.
we'll let you know that. Yeah.
And a few just asking here about local cases in Dundrum and things. That's not your area. We'll have someone else maybe coming in from Irish Water to discuss that.
Yeah, I think I can't really comment on those places because I work on the project, but I understand people's concerns about issues that are ongoing at the moment. But I think we'll get our local team will address those maybe later on today.
Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, listen, thank you very much for joining me in studio. Gary Gibson of the Irish Water Project, Senior Programme Manager with the Water Supply Project. Thanks again.
Thank you, Stephen.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Well, you're very welcome back to Tip Today with me, Stephen Gleeson. As you can imagine, a lot of messages in there in relation to Irish water and the piece there with Gary. One says, Ireland is water wealthy. We have more fresh water above and below the ground than anyone else. And Frank in Turles says, how is a seasonal drought worsened by climate change? Please explain. Another one, this project won't be good for the country, says William in Kilmore Dalla. And Mary says, water should have been sorted out years ago rather than in 2026. So a lot of messages coming in there, but as Gary said there, you can get along to some of those meetings and meet the people involved, and they're going to be scheduled over the coming weeks and months. Well, last week there was a great reaction to our piece with chronic pain specialist and mindset coach Jack Marshall, and Jack joins me now on the line. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good, Jack. Great reaction to your piece last week with Fran, and I know you had an event was it Sunday morning in Cashel? How did you get on at that?
Yeah, we had a chronic pain masterclass in Hollandafela in Cashel, and this is an event that I plan on running monthly to bring awareness around chronic pain and the different challenges that people have with it. I think the main takeaway from it was just how many people are in chronic pain, and not just chronic pain, but also weaknesses in the body, long-term tension, long-term discomfort, and even just chronic disease in general. So that was definitely the main takeaway. And, you know, we did a little bit of feedback at the end, just taking questions from people, and people definitely had more awareness around what really causes long-term pain, what causes chronic disease. And that was really my intention of it, because I think for many people, it almost gets to the age where people are 30 and they become very resigned to the fact that pain is just part of being human, like long-term pain. And they don't really think that it's possible to actually feel at ease in the body and to feel a sense of health. So my intention was to really empower people that it is possible, and that these long-term pain conditions and weakness in the lower back and things that are very common in our modern world, just because they're common and they've become normalised, it doesn't mean that's the way it has to be. So that was really the main takeaway from the masterclass.
Good stuff. And Jack, what can somebody listening this morning do to heal from chronic pain? What can we do as a people if we suffer that? You know, how can we go about, you know, taking the little steps first? What do you think?
Yeah, I think firstly, it's really to understand what causes the pain. And I think this is the hardest thing for people really to understand. And one of my intentions when I run these masterclasses or when I have clients who have chronic pain is to really empower them and bring them to a space where they understand what causes pain. Because for many people, they believe that their pain is a physical issue, especially when it's long-term pain. And if you're only looking at it from a physical perspective, your healing will be very limited. So I think the first thing for listeners who are in long-term pain is to understand that what causes long-term pain is suppressed emotions and resistance in the mind. So, look, I could talk about this for a long time. There's a lot in it. But when I mean suppressed emotions, is the body has a natural flow of energy in the body. So the body in its natural state flows effortlessly. But throughout our lives, we accumulate suppressed emotions difficult things happen, traumas, difficult experiences. And when we don't process those events emotionally, the emotions get trapped in the body and distort that natural flow of energy, which leads to the pain and discomfort that we experience. Now, this is not something we're taught in school, and it can be very difficult for people to see that. Maybe if they're listening now, they don't fully understand. But this is a place that I've come to in my own experience, and for people who come to my masterclasses, they really begin to understand this during the masterclass. And ultimately, one of the most important things to help people to heal from chronic pain is acceptance. And what that means is to really accept their pain and to feel it. So whenever the pain arises in their body, generally we go into a state of resistance and we fight the pain and we try to make it go away. But in those moments where the pain arises, if that person can really sit with the pain, maybe even close their eyes and just feel it, this is the number one thing anyone can do to heal.
That's fascinating. And Jack, what was your biggest learning from healing from chronic pain? You know, how did you get to where you are now?
To be honest, it was much of what I've just explained. For me, like many people, I was convinced my issue was physical. And I went to many doctors, specialists, physios, chiropractors. And I even did a lot of yoga and a lot of mobility. And whilst those things did help, I kind of plateaued and it wasn't really getting me to where I wanted to be. So then I began meditating, and that helped to a degree. But what really shifted things, the biggest turning point, was when I began to feel my emotions. Because I realized during meditation and different work that I did, that the underlying cause of the pain was my emotions. And when I realized that, I began to feel them and embrace them. And that was the number one turning point for me. When I began to feel and embrace the pain, that's when I began to heal. So that's what I would say for anyone who is listening to this. Really tune into your body, notice what is happening from moment to moment, and really embrace and feel the pain inside you.
That's fantastic. Just a couple of messages in, Jack, to bring to you. Stephen, following your conversation on leaving cert and careers earlier on, I would love to know how Jack qualified and got into this line of work, especially while in such pain. A fascinating interview. That's a texter just sent that in here, Jack, now. So I'll put that to you.
Yeah, again, I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I actually used to be an accountant, so I qualified as an accountant. And I'd actually just finished my qualification, and then, but for me, my health was the most important thing in my life, and I had to take a step back and leave that job because my health was just, I was in so much pain, I wasn't able to do any of the things that I loved. So I quit the job, and I just committed completely to really finding out what was going on. And, you know, a number of synchronicities happened. I ended up going to India, meditating, practicing yoga. I found a fantastic Ayurveda practitioner who really taught me a lot of what I know now about pain and what causes it. And then ultimately my own journey. No one can ever go on the same journey you do. And it was just from personal experience and to keep following my gut. That's really what has got me to where I am now.
And Jack, just finally, in terms of mental health, you know, what is success? You know, how can we live a successful life?
Yeah, so whenever people do my courses and whenever I have a one-to-one client, it's one of the first questions that I will get people to ask, because success to many people is something external. And we've been conditioned to think that it's the money that we have, the car that we drive, the house that we own. But ultimately, true success is inner peace. And you can have all those things in the world. You can have everything externally, but you can still suffer greatly. So success to me is really about going inwards and finding the peace and contentment that's already inside you. And in order to do that, a lot of the time, we have things that are in the way of that peace and contentment. And they are the different mental and emotional challenges we have, the different beliefs that we have about ourselves and the different beliefs that we have about life, and the different things in our life that we haven't fully processed and integrated, like traumas and difficult experiences. So for me, success is really an inward journey. It's not about accumulating more things. It's actually about a dissolution process. So it's about going inside, dissolving everything we're not, in order to realize who we truly are.
That's fascinating, Jack. A lot of messages coming in, but we're going to be just cut short today with time. But listen, will you come on again another day with Fran, and we can go more in depth about this? And just before you go, tell us, will you have another workshop or day coming up in Holland-na-Féile in the next while that people can get along to?
Yeah, I don't have a date set in the diary, Stephen, but once I do, I'll announce it on my different social media platforms, and I'll also be back on Tipp FM for sure. I love these conversations, and I can announce the date on Tipp FM too.
That's brilliant. Jack Marshall, chronic pain specialist and mindset coach. Thanks for joining us this morning on Tipp FM.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye now.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
Well, you're very welcome back to Tipp Today. There's been a lot of texts and messages in here all morning, and it is, very intense here on the messages. Just to go through a few of them here. There's more about Irish water here as well, and another one, Stephen, the Leaving Cert is nothing more than a memory test and should be changed to continuous assessment rather than memory. That's in relation to the piece that we had there with Stephen Buckley a little earlier on. Well, Leanne has been here and she's gone through the archives here and has found a fascinating piece here about a Roscrea robbery. So have a listen.
Gardaí are being backed up by army units in a search of the woods around the village of Camross in County Laois, about 8 miles from Roscrea. It was there that the silver-coloured Corina car in which the gang of 3 men made their getaway was found this afternoon. The drama began when 2 local sisters, employees at the Employment Exchange in Roscrea, turned up at the Bank of Ireland in the town on what was known to be a weekly part of their job, to collect the cash for the payout at the exchange. The sisters were in the family car driven by their mother. With them was a Garda escort car driven by a band Garda with a sergeant as passenger. A gang of 3 armed men wearing balaclava helmets emerged from the other side of the road when the 2 ladies came out of the bank and put a briefcase containing about £12,000 on the back seat of their car. Brandishing sawn-off shotguns, the gang smashed the car window and took the briefcase. When Sergeant John Byrne tried to tackle them, they fired 2 and possibly 3 bursts of gunshot at the Garda car, injuring Sergeant Byrne in the lower legs. Band Garda Fidelma Brennan was uninjured. Within hours of the raid, the 2 Employment Exchange workers, Miss Anne O'Mara and her sister Eileen, were back behind the Employment Exchange counter, getting on with the payout. Gardaí say that the gang's getaway car had been stolen in Dunleary, County Dublin. One theory is that they're dealing with a Dublin gang which is now trying to get back to the city. A search of the woods around Camross is expected to continue until nightfall in the chance that the gang may be hemmed in. The injured Sergeant Byrne is said to be comfortable in Nina Hospital.
Well, what a fascinating piece from the archives there that Leanne found about a Roscrea robbery back in the day. Well, we've had a listener in touch this week who got in touch after an incident at her son's resting place left her feeling distraught. Angela Maguire joins me on the line now. Good morning, Angela. And we'll just see now if we can get Angela on the line there. Don't have her. Hello, Angela. Morning, Angela. So it's not there at the moment, but we'll try get back in touch with Angela there, and we'll see if we have her on the lines. And Leanne is here with me in studio now this morning. And Leanne, it has been mental on the text machine here and the WhatsApps.
It has been absolutely crazy here today, especially after the Irish Water piece, and Philip and Pat Mullally this morning as well. So there's been plenty of anger, but also a lot of agreement with what they had to say.
Yeah, I mean, the Irish Water piece, it's a very emotional thing for everybody involved, you know, that are living up there and that are, you know, in relation to it. And communication is obviously the answer here.
Exactly, and then that question comes in. Nobody knows their land like their own land. And we've heard a lot of that, and we have a lot of questions compiled that we didn't get to today, but we're going to send them off to Irish Water, and they will get back to us then. So we'll have some correspondence and responses to read out.
Yeah, that'll be great to have. And a lot of reaction, as you were saying there, about GAA Go and a cashless society, which seems to be a big thing at the moment.
Yeah, that idea. Now, I'm terrible. I never have cash on me. And if someone comes to the door with tickets or anything, I have to try and ask, any chance, ma'am, you might have a fiver going around. I'm terrible for tapping the card. Yeah. Again, though, you feel like you lose control of exactly what you're tapping, what you're spending. It's so easy to just tap the phone. Whereas when you have cash in your hand, you're aware when it's getting a little low.
Oh, yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? And like sometimes you could just go out maybe an evening out or somewhere, and all of a sudden there's a lot of cash gone out of it and you don't even notice it going.
Exactly. And I know Pat Mullally mentioned Netflix as well, and obviously that's a cost, and a lot of people are watching the documentaries, which brings us on to our next topic, is this documentary I was telling you about.
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about this, and it's a big one at the moment. I haven't seen it yet, but Should I Marry a Murderer, Leanne?
Yeah, and I told you not to watch it before this piece if you hadn't watched it already, because I wanted your honest reaction. We're kind of putting you on the hop a little bit about this one. So it's brilliant. I watched it. I was stunned. I just couldn't believe it. So what happened was Caroline Moorhead, she is a pathologist, she's a doctor in Scotland, and in 2020 she decided, after a breakup from a long-term relationship, to go on Tinder. And Tinder is the big new thing now. Nobody's meeting in the pubs anymore, nobody's running into someone on the street, it's all Tinder.
And that's where a lot of dating takes place.
Yeah, that idea of a connection, of walking up to someone in a bar, is really gone. On Tinder, you can kind of swipe through as many people as you like, and that one's nose is too big, that one's ears are too small, and pick the one you think is perfect. So she came across Sandy McKellar, who was living about an hour or two away from her in Scotland in the countryside, and she described him herself as a big 6 foot burly farmer, manly man, out with the rifle, hunting. So she was very, very interested in him. So she decided to just send him her number, and he rang her, and they decided to set a date to meet up.
Right.
So it's kind of a bit forward to start. Straight away he invited her down to the estate he lived on. So he lived on a cottage on a large estate, so like an old kind of royal estate. So she drove down, and her friend said to her, you know, what happens if he's a murderer? And she said, no way he's a murderer, stop that, like, you're talking about movie things here, there's no way he's a murderer.
Yeah.
So she drove down, and love at first sight, really got on with him. They went for a drive around the farm, and then he asked to meet her again the next day. So their relationship moved very, very quickly. Right. And within about a month or two of meeting, he proposed to her with no ring, which is the big thing. They were doing a lot of drinking and partying on the farm, and he proposed to her. So on the drive, on the way home, after he proposed at night on the cliffs, she asked him if he'd anything he wanted her to know. If there was any big secrets or anything he wanted to tell her before they made the jump and got married. And her family and friends kind of weren't for it. They thought it was very, very fast. She was only after coming out of a very long relationship. But she loved him as far as she was concerned. So he admitted to her that he'd been involved in a hit and run.
Okay.
That there was a cyclist on the road, on a very rural road where he lived. Him and his twin brother were coming home from a party under the influence of drugs and alcohol. He said a car came round the bend with the full lights on, and he hit the cyclist.
Gosh.
Now, he claimed at this point the cyclist was dead from that. He was dead, he was not alive. With the impact of the car, he died.
Yeah.
But he admitted then that they took the body through the farmland and buried him.
Okay.
So she's in the car and she explained she was trying to be calm. She stayed in the bed with him that night. She was kind of didn't know what to think of it, how to process it. So she went into work the next day, obviously working with dead bodies, and had looked up, obviously, this man who went missing, who was Tony Parsons. So he was actually a veteran who was cycling through across Scotland to raise money for charity.
Right.
He was married, he had kids, and this was the victim. This was the man that was killed.
Always a sad story there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and in the documentary, a lot of people have complained that it focused too much on the story of the lady in the relationship and finding out her partner was a murderer, not enough on the actual victim.
Okay, yeah.
So then she decided, after a long time, she brought him to her house for Christmas, knowing he was a murderer, didn't tell her family. And then she had a breakdown. She had a breakdown after his brother, the twin, told her the Tony Parsons was in fact alive when they hit him. They went home, changed their clothes, got into another car, came back, loaded him up alive, drove him to a forest and left him overnight alive, bleeding out in the forest. And that they came back the next day and buried him.
Sounds like murder, all right.
Yeah.
Attempted murder anyway.
So they didn't ring 999, it would be over there. They didn't call for help. They didn't try to help them themselves. He was alive after the impact of the car. So his family were looking for him for 3 years at this point, because obviously their grandfather had set off on this cycle across Scotland to raise money for a great cause. He disappeared. And it's not the kind of place where there's CCTV everywhere. So they had one clip of him cycling past a petrol station. That was the last time he was ever seen. And they spent so much money, a lot of funds, advertisements everywhere to try and find their father, not knowing he had been buried by these twins on the land.
That's insane.
It got more complicated then, because she went to the police. Her parents told her, you need to go to the police about this. And the police told her to keep him on side until they could kind of get evidence.
No.
So she then kind of went back and forth. She started recording conversations with kind of things where he'd admit things and say like, oh, he shouldn't have been on the road. It was my life or his. So she used to send these clips to the police. And they said, right, we need a location for the body. But she kind of seemed to be in some kind of psychosis. She called it a mania, where she kind of couldn't separate actually being in the relationship from kind of being in an undercover for the police. So she drove to his house in the middle of the night after the police told her, keep a distance, but keep him happy. Yeah. Say you're going to spend a few weeks with your family. She went to the house in the middle of the night to meet him and suggested they go shooting, because they do clay shooting. So he drives her, knowing this man is a murderer. He takes her up the mountains in a car with a gun. And then she remembered he had said the body was around where they used to do the clay shooting. So she decides then, when they're walking back to the car, to throw a Diet Red Bull can over her shoulder. In her head, she's like, that'll mark where the body is. And he saw her. And he said, go back and pick up that can. Why are you littering here? So she goes back, yeah, sorry, stamps the can into the ground, gets back to his house, drives back home to her house, rings the police and says, I left a Red Bull can where the body is.
Right.
They end up getting arrested for the first time. She stays in contact with them. So she's kind of afraid of what'll happen if they find out it was her. They had no idea it was her. She lets them move into her house then, while the investigation is going on. Yeah. Lives with them, becomes addicted to drugs, alcohol. They basically party for weeks while the investigation is going on. So she's living with the people she knows are murderers, but can't tell them the fact that she's the witness that reported them. So it gets more and more extreme. It seems like she still loves him. So eventually she ends things with him because he finds out it was her. He finds out that the Red Bull can was what was used for them to find the body. So after they spend a few weeks apart, they decide they miss each other. So while the investigation is going on, he knows it was her that has outed him to the police. She decides to move into his house. So she lives.
Not a good move,
No. So the police are like, our star witness is living with her boyfriend, who she knows is a murderer, and she is our witness. What are we going to do if she decides not to testify? So they end up finding the body of Tony Parsons. And the people who dug up the body say that at the time the body came out of the shallow grave, they'd buried him under. They were hunters, the twins. Their main job was hunting. They had put all the bones of animals over his body in a pit. to try and cover up what they'd done. So they said when the body was lifted from the grave, sun just came through the clouds. And all the detectives just said a silent prayer then for the family. But it just got more and more extreme. She ended up living with him in a remote place with his brother. And the brother said it was the weirdest kind of setup they had, where they knew she had admitted that they did this, but they all loved each other. So they carried on like this for 6 months, living with him, knowing...
Ah, that's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, so in the end they broke up, and then she found out she was going to have to testify against him. And it just got really, really weird. She went into absolute psychosis. She started heavily taking drugs. And this lady was a doctor. She'd studied for 11 years to get to the place where she was. She decided on the day she was set to testify, instead of going to the court, she got in her car and drove to the estate. So he was in prison at this stage, and she got it into her head that the only thing the detectives hadn't found was the bike Tony Parsons was on when he was hit. So in her psychosis, she drove up to the estate and decided she was going to hike for hours to this waterfall where she thought the brothers had hidden the bike.
My God.
So obviously the police are like, you didn't come to court, you were subpoenaed. So they send out a whole crew of helicopters and police cars to try and catch her.
So now she's the one in trouble.
Now she's the one in trouble. So she hikes for hours. Then she spots a tractor in someone's yard. She robs the tractor while the police are all trying to get up the mountain, and she drives the tractor up the road, up the mountain, and pulls it in on the middle of this road. She's never driven a tractor before, but someone had left the keys in it. She drives up the mountain, blocks the road, and gets to the waterfall. And at this point in the documentaries, everyone's like, go find the bike, you've done all this, go find the bike. She stops and decides to have a cigarette and listen to some French music. This French song, it's like No Regrets.
Oh,
so
yes,
she actually videoed this whole experience on her phone. The whole story. Yes. So she's standing on the side of this mountain. The waterfall is right there. She's having a cigarette, waving her arms around, singing this song. And at this point, everyone's like, you're meant to be in court. You're after going this far. Find the bike. No. The police caught up with her, and she too was arrested.
My God. It sounds like she had just a breakdown.
She had a complete psychosis. She was taking so many hard drugs. Her family were distraught because they had put her in the car in her outfit and sent her to court.
You have to blame the police that actually sent her back in, though, to a possible crime scene.
Yes, the big argument on her part, and there was also a mental health specialist in the documentary, and they said she was offered no support. Since she was a doctor, they assumed that she would be able for this. Since she dealt with death on a daily basis doing postmortems, they assumed that she was not a risk. They'd only been in a relationship a month or two with Sandy at this stage, so they assumed she'd be fine. But the mental health specialist made the point, just because someone's in a relationship a short amount of time, she should have had supports there. She should have been offered to not have to go into the court to have her statement recorded and played in court.
The police sound like they were in the wrong there now.
Yeah, so both of the brothers were charged. One of the twins got 7 years and the other got, I think, 12 to 20, somewhere in that range.
Leanne, you've sold it to me. I'm going to find out about this one.
You have to watch it now.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. Should I marry a murderer?
Should I marry a murderer? Yeah, 3 episodes. Brilliant.
Yeah. Listen, great stuff. Thanks for that. And for today, for producing. Busy show.
A very busy show. And I know the phone lines had a bit of a tech issue there, so we will get back to Angela because her story is absolutely beautiful.
And we'll have that. And wherever you're listening from, hope you enjoyed the show this morning. We're going to take a break and then it'll be news from me, Stephen. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.